right, let's dive into a genre that's pretty much the soundtrack to our lives, right? Pop music. We've got a whole bunch of articles and notes all about pop music, and honestly, I'm kind of already humming along just thinking about it.
Well, pop music does have that way of getting stuck in your head. I mean, that's just those catchy melodies, relatable themes. It just seems to resonate with almost everyone.
Yeah, for sure. But before we get totally lost in the earworms, maybe we should define what we're even talking about. I mean, is it as simple as if it's popular, it's pop?
Well, it's a good place to start, but it's a little bit more than that. The term pop is short for popular music, and it really kind of exploded as genre in the late 1950s. And it's interesting because early pop didn't just appear out of nowhere. It really pulled from a bunch of different styles that were already popular.
Ah, so like a musical melting pot. I was reading about how early pop got inspiration from everything from like sentimental ballads to gospel and jazz and country and even rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that fusion of all those sounds that gave pop music its super broad appeal right from the start. But to really get it, we kind of got to go back in time a little bit.
Ooh, a musical time machine, I'm in. I was reading about some of those early pop icons like Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, and Dinah Shore. They might not be the first names that pop into your head when you think pop music today, but they were huge.
Absolutely. They really laid the groundwork for what pop music would become. And Bing Crosby, with that smooth voice and those big orchestral arrangements, he was actually called the king of pop back then.
The OG king of pop. I love it. Kind of funny to think of those crooners as the original pop stars. But as I was going through the history, I was really struck by how much technology has shaped the sound of pop. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Technology and pop music, I mean, they've always kind of been linked. Like, take microphones, for example. Back in the 1940s, microphones became way more sensitive, and this allowed singers to use a softer, kind of more intimate style.
Ah, so instead of belting it out like they're projecting to the back row of a theater, they could kind of whisper sweet nothings into the microphone.
Exactly. And that change in vocal style had a huge impact on how pop music felt, created a sense of intimacy and closeness that really wasn't there before.
It's crazy how something as simple as a microphone can revolutionize a whole genre of music. And speaking of revolutions, what about those little 45 RPM records? I bet those were a game changer for pop music.
Oh yeah, for sure. 45s were cheap, they were durable, and they were perfect for showcasing a single hit song. And that made it so much easier for people to buy and share the latest tunes, which really helped boost those pop stars and that whole celebrity culture around them.
It's like the 45 was the original share button. But technology's impact on pop went way beyond audio, right? What about when television came around? Suddenly, artists couldn't just sound good, they had to look good too, right?
Exactly. Television added a whole new dimension to being a pop star. They had to have a visual presence, a style that would really grab people's attention on screen. And then, of course, came MTV in the 1980s, and suddenly visuals were like everything.
Oh yeah, MTV was like pop music on steroids. I remember those early music videos. So much creativity, so much energy. They weren't just promoting the music, they were like mini movies.
Exactly. And artists like Michael Jackson and Madonna, they were masters of both music and visuals, totally dominated that era. They understood that with MTV, image and performance were just as important as the music.
It's really wild how each new technology seemed to kind of push pop music in a new direction. But pop's reach goes way beyond MTV and music videos, right? I mean, it's a global phenomenon now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, while the US and the UK, they've been the powerhouses, pop has spread all over the world, really taken root in different cultures and become this global force.
I've been checking out some of the different kinds of global pop, and it's really incredible. Like J-pop and K-pop, they just exploded in popularity.
Yeah, and it's really amazing to see how those genres blend like global trends with their own unique cultural elements. It's like a global conversation through music. But, with any popular art form, you're going to have some critics. Pop music definitely has its share, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Not everybody is bopping along to the top 40.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that people criticize about pop music?
Well, one of the common criticisms is that pop prioritizes commercial success, making money over artistic value, basically making catchy tunes that sell, instead of pushing boundaries or expressing really deep ideas.
So it's seen as a little shallow or formulaic by some people.
Yeah, exactly. Like the music critic Simon Frith, he argued that pop music is made to appeal to everyone, and he saw that as a bad thing. He thought it lacked a distinct cultural origin, and depth, made it kind of bland, in his opinion.
So the things that make pop so catchy and easy to listen to are also what some people find problematic. It's like a double-edged sword. But even as a pop music fan, I have to admit, sometimes I wonder if the quality of pop music has declined lately. Is there any truth to that?
You know, that's a debate that's been going on for a while now. Critics and people who comment on society, even industry researchers, have pointed to things like, record sales going down, a lack of innovation, and even that pop music is becoming too similar, all starting to sound the same, as signs that it's declining.
Yeah, like the idea that all pop songs are starting to sound the same. That is a little disheartening.
It is definitely a concern. But on the other hand, there are a ton of artists out there who are really pushing the limits of pop and experimenting with new sounds and ideas.
I think that's what keeps it exciting, that constant kind of push and pull between the familiar and the new.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that tension, that's what makes pop music so dynamic and always interesting.
I like that. We've covered a lot of ground already in this deep dive, from the history of pop, its global reach, even some of the criticisms it faces.
Mm-hmm.
But what really fascinates me is how pop music reflects the culture and the times it was made in. It's like a sonic time capsule.
I love that, a sonic time capsule. Pop music does have that remarkable ability to capture the spirit of a moment.
Okay, I'm ready to hop in that time machine and see how pop music has changed along with culture,
Yeah, so, we were talking about pop music being like a sonic time capsule.
Uh-huh.
Ready to see those reflections?
I am. Yeah, let's jump in.
Okay, cool. So, let's start with a decade that was just like all about change, right?
Right.
The 1960s.
Yeah.
From civil rights to the Vietnam War, so much upheaval, so much social transformation. How did pop music respond to all of that? Yeah.
Well, it was almost like pop music became like the voice of that generation.
Oh, yeah.
You think about the rise of rock and roll, right? Which really challenged all those traditional norms.
And gave, young people this outlet, this way to express their rebellious side.
Yeah, it's like pop music gave like a soundtrack to those, kind of crazy times.
Yeah.
A way for people to process all those changes that were happening.
Exactly. And that connection between, pop music and the culture.
Right.
It continued into the 70s with disco.
Oh, yeah.
Disco was all about breaking free from all those societal constraints, celebrating diversity, inclusivity out there on the dance floor.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that. Disco was all about just letting loose.
Right.
Embracing like a more carefree lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like a reaction to the intensity of the 60s, I think.
And then, of course, we got the MTV era in the 80s,
right,
which, as we said earlier, had a massive impact.
Huge.
But it wasn't just about the visuals, right? It was also about how music was consumed and marketed, totally different.
Yeah. MTV, turned music into this 24/7 spectacle. Suddenly, artists had this whole new platform to connect with fans, and image became even more crucial to making it.
Exactly. Think about those iconic music videos, right?
Oh yeah.
Michael Jackson's Thriller,
right?
Madonna, a Prayer.
Yes.
They were groundbreaking visually. They pushed the limits of what a music video could be.
Yeah, they weren't just entertainment, they were cultural events.
Yeah.
They sparked conversations, pushed those social boundaries, which is something pop music's always been good at,
Right.
Even if it's kind of hidden behind a catchy beat sometimes.
You're right. The pop often reflects the anxieties, the aspirations, even the controversies, you know, of whatever time it's made in. And then, we moved into the 90s, and there was another big shift with the rise of hip hop.
Oh, yeah.
And its undeniable influence on pop music.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That fusion of hip hop and pop was massive. You saw artists like MC Hammer, Salt and Peppa break through to the mainstream,
right,
and then later Missy Elliott, Lauryn Hill. They completely redefined what a pop star could be.
It was a game changer. Hip hop brought a new energy, new rhythms, and lyrical complexity to pop music. And that blend of genres has just kept going.
It feels like genres are just more fluid now than ever.
Yeah.
You hear hip hop, electronic music, Latin rhythms, all sorts of influences in contemporary pop.
You're right. That's a great observation. Pop has always been this melting pot, but it seems like in today's world, those boundaries are getting even blurrier.
Yeah.
And I think that's exciting.
I do too, yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like pop music is constantly evolving and reflecting the increasingly diverse voices and experiences of people all over the world.
And technology is a huge part of that, right?
Yeah.
Who knows what the future of pop music holds?
Yeah.
We might have virtual pop stars, interactive music videos,
Right.
even algorithms that create like personalized pop songs for our individual tastes.
Okay, that's fascinating and a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But, it's definitely something to think about. We've talked a lot about, the sound of pop. But what about the words? Are there like recurring themes or messages that pop songs tend to explore?
Well, love for sure.
Yeah.
Love is a huge theme.
Of course.
Whether it's like a classic ballad or a contemporary club banger, pop songs have always been about our romantic experiences,
Right.
The highs, the lows, the heartbreaks.
Yeah, it's like pop music gives us this language to express those feelings that we all experience, but maybe don't know how to, put into words ourselves.
Exactly. And it's not just romantic love, right?
Right.
There's also, friendship, family, loss, longing, the search for, who you are.
Yeah.
It's all about tapping into those universal human things that connect us all.
And speaking of connections, let's talk about the role of like pop stars themselves.
Okay.
They're more than just singers and musicians, right?
Mm.
They're like cultural icons, they set trends, and often they're like role models for young people.
You're absolutely right. And especially today, with social media,
Yeah.
pop stars have this level of influence that goes way beyond the music. I mean, they shape fashion trends.
Uh-huh.
They start conversations about important social issues.
Right.
And they inspire, young people to dream big.
That influence can be super powerful.
Oh, yeah.
For better or worse. I mean, we've seen pop stars throughout history use their platform to speak out against injustice, advocate for equality,
Yeah.
promote messages of, tolerance and acceptance.
It's inspiring to see that, how pop can be a force for good. But we also have to be real about the kind of the downsides, of all that pop star worship and the pressure that comes with living like your life in the public eye.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that, behind all the glitz and glam,
Yeah.
pop stars are human beings just like us. They face their own struggles and challenges. And it's important to kind of approach their work, their lives with empathy and respect.
Well said. Pop music can be a source of so much joy,
Yeah.
inspiration, and even like social commentary. But it's important to approach it with a critical mind, recognize both its power, but
Yep.
also its limitations.
Yeah, I think so. Now, we've explored, the evolution of pop music, its global impact, those cultural influences that shape it, and this complex relationship between pop stars and their fans. But there's one piece of the puzzle that we haven't really talked about yet.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
The business side of things.
The business of pop. Yeah, that's a crucial part. I mean,
Yeah.
pop music is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And, understanding how the business works can really shed light on how artists become famous, how trends come and go, and how the sound of pop evolves over time.
Okay, let's get into it. From record labels to streaming services, the business of pop is constantly changing. It's fascinating and, sometimes a little cutthroat. But I'm ready to explore it. All right, so we're going to tackle the business side of pop music now. It's a whole world of contracts and royalties and marketing magic. Honestly, it's a little intimidating, but I'm kind of curious to peel back the curtain and see how it all works.
Yeah, it's definitely complex, but understanding the business side, I think it helps us understand like how pop music gets made and how it reaches us,
Right, yeah.
Like for decades, record labels, they were the kings.
Oh, yeah.
They were the ones who discovered and developed artists. They financed recordings. They controlled distribution, everything.
So they were like the gatekeepers, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, if you wanted to make it big, you needed a record deal. But then the internet happened.
Right.
And that changed everything. I mean, digital platforms like iTunes and Spotify, they totally revolutionized how we listen to music. And suddenly, artists had all these other options to get their music out there.
But that must have been a huge shakeup for those record labels. Did they just disappear?
Well, not exactly. I mean, they've had to adapt for sure.
Yeah.
They still play a role, with developing artists, marketing, promotion.
Right.
But they don't have as much power as they used to.
So if record labels aren't in total control anymore, who is shaping pop music these days?
Well, streaming services have become major players. Platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music,
Yeah.
Instead of buying albums or individual songs,
Right.
now we pay like a monthly fee for access to millions of tracks.
It's like the all-you-can-eat buffet of music.
Exactly.
But how does that work for artists? I've heard those streaming royalties aren't exactly making musicians rich.
Yeah, that's a real issue. Streaming royalties are really low.
Yeah.
So artists have to be creative, they got to find other ways to make money,
Right.
touring, selling merch, brand partnerships, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Sounds kind of tough to be a musician these days, especially if you're just starting out.
It's definitely got its challenges.
Yeah.
But it also opens up a lot of opportunities. Like now independent artists can reach a global audience without needing a big label deal.
Right.
And then there are platforms like Bandcamp and Patreon.
Yeah.
They allow artists to connect directly with fans
Right.
and, build a more stable career.
It's like the internet has democratized music.
Yeah.
But I imagine there's still a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
What are some of those things that the music industry is struggling with today?
Well, copyright, for sure.
Yeah.
Data privacy. And then there's the whole thing about algorithms,
Uh-huh.
They decide what music gets promoted on those platforms. That's an ongoing concern. And there's still a lot of debate about how to make sure artists are paid fairly in the age of streaming.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of work to do to make the business side of pop more fair and sustainable. But even with all the challenges, it's clear that pop music is such a powerful force.
Yeah.
Culturally, economically.
It is, absolutely. And it keeps changing. It's going to be really interesting to see how technology keeps shaping the industry,
Yeah,
and what new stuff pops up.
for sure. Well, we've covered a ton in this deep dive into pop music. We explored the history, the global impact, the cultural influences, the whole power of pop stars, and even that complicated business side of things.
Yeah, we went deep.
Really did. And I hope our listeners have a deeper understanding of this genre that's so much a part of our lives.
Me too. I mean, pop music, it sometimes gets a bad rap, for being shallow or formulaic.
Right.
But as we've seen, it's so much more. It's a reflection of us,
Yeah.
Our culture, our emotions, our dreams, what we want.
Absolutely. So as a final thought for our listeners, I'd say to dig a little deeper, explore beyond the top 40, and you'll find there's incredible diversity and richness in the world of pop music. There really is something out there for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Keep those playlists going. Stay curious.
Yeah.
And never underestimate the power of a great pop song to lift your spirits, make you think, or just get you moving. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into pop music.
It's been fun.